1. The woman's body was lying on the beach. Eve's tomb, he would later come to think of it. Not the actual tomb in Jeddah that was flattened in 1928 to squash out any cults attached to her name, nor the same one that was bulldozed again in 1975 to confirm the point. This more fanciful tomb was a plain, narrow strip of beach north of Jeddah. That afternoon, Abu Yusuf carried his fishing gear down the gentle slope to the sand. He was a seasoned fisherman who preferred the activity for its sport rather than its practical value. But a series of layoffs at the desalination plant had forced him to take up fishing to feed his family. 62 and blessed with his mother's skin, he had withstood a lifetime of exposure to the sun and looked as radiant as a man in his 40s. He hit the edge of the shore, the hard-packed sand, with an expansive feeling of pleasure. There were certainly worse ways to feed a family. He looked up the beach, and there she was, the woman he would later think of as Eve. He set his tackle box on the sand and approached carefully in case she was sleeping, in case she sat up and wiped her eyes and mistook him for a djinn. She was lying on her side, her dark hair splayed around her head like the tentacles of a dangerous anemone. The seaweed on her cloak looked at first like some sort of horrible growth. One arm was tucked beneath the body, the other one was bare, and it rested on the sand in a pleading way, as a sleeper might clutch a pillow during a bad dream. The hand was mutilated. It looked to be burned. There were numerous cuts on the forearm. Her bottom half was naked, the black cloak pushed up above her waist, the jeans she was wearing tangled around her feet like chains. His attention turned to the half of her face that wasn't buried in sand. Whole sections of her cheeks and lips were missing. What remained of the skin was swollen and red, and there were horrible cuts across her forehead. One eye was open, vacant, dead. "Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim," he began to whisper. The prayer spooled from his mouth as he stared dumbfounded and horrified. He knew he shouldn't look. He shouldn't want that sort of image knocking around in his memory, but it took an effort to turn away. Her left leg was half buried in the sand, but now that he was closer, he saw that the right one was cut around the thigh, the slashes bulbous and curved like tamarinds. The rest of the skin was unnaturally pale and bloated. He knew better than to touch the body, but he had the impulse to lay something over the exposed half of her, to give her a last bit of dignity. He had to go back up to the street to get a good cellular signal. The police came, then a coroner and a forensics team. Abu Yusuf waited on the street, still clutching his fishing rod, the tackle box planted firmly by his feet. The young officer who first arrived on the scene treated him with affection and called him Uncle. "Would you like a drink, Uncle? A chair? I can bring a chair." They interviewed him politely. "Yes, Uncle, that's important, thank you." The whole time he kept the woman in his line of sight. Out of politeness, he didn't stare. While the forensics team worked, Abu Yusuf began to feel crushingly tired. He sensed that shutting his eyes would lead to a dangerous sleep, so he let his eyes drift out to sea, let his thoughts drift further. Eve. Her real tomb was in the city. It had always seemed strange that she was buried in Jeddah and that Adam was buried in Mecca. Had they had a falling out after they were exiled from the Garden of Eden? Or had Adam, like so many men today, simply died first, giving Eve time to wander? His grandmother, rest her soul, once told him that Eve had been 180 meters tall. His grandmother had seen Eve's grave as a girl, before the king's viceroy had demolished the site. It had been longer than her father's entire camel caravan. One of the forensics men bent over the body. Abu Yusuf snapped out of his reverie and caught a last glimpse of the girl's bare arm. "Allah receive her." He leaned over and picked up his tackle box, felt a rush of nausea. Swallowing hard, he looked up to the street and began to walk with an energy he didn't really have. "Uncle, can I assist?" This was another officer.